Hi, everyone. Neil Cavuto here. Glad to have you. And we interrupt these international crises in Japan and Libya for one a little bit closer to home, actually a lot closer, Wisconsin. That crackdown on public employee unions cracked, at least for now. A judge there issuing a temporary restraining order today against the publication of the law itself. Dane County Circuit Judge Mary Ann Sumi says she just needs time to rule on the merits of the case. For now, a huge setback for Republican Governor Scott Walker, who says he's still confident he'll prevail. So this doesn't mean his union-taming law is necessarily licked, but it does mean that his opponents are now licking their chops. They're already going after Republicans who voted for the legislation and trying to recall them. And unions organizing the effort are having no problem getting the signatures necessary. So in a week of out-of-the-blue events, something that could out and out stop Republican budget-cutting governors in their tracks? Now, first on Fox, Wisconsin's Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Kleefisch. Governor, what do you think now? What happens now?
Well, what happens right now is our Department of Justice, our Assistant Attorney General, is going to go back into court and request permission to actually go forward and appeal the temporary restraining order. There is no problem at all with this law. There's no problem, no issue with the legality of the law. What they're having issue with is the way a meeting was called. And we know that our state Senate is fully aware of the rules that govern their body, and so we are confident that they will prevail in this.
All right. Now, what the judge is saying effectively is that, and she might rule in favor of the law anyway, but that it was done with not enough notice and not in the open way a law should be debated. Now, again, there were a lot of outside reasons for that, the picketing outside the Capitol, what have you. But would that have some merit, and would it prompt something as simple as a redo?
Well, it might, except for the fact that the Senate and the Assembly understand the rules that govern their own bodies. In this case, the legislature was in special session, and what happened was they called a conference committee. Under the rules of the Senate and the Assembly, all they really needed to do was simply post a note on the bulletin board. In fact, they actually gave other legislative offices about 2 hours worth of notice to come to this meeting. Everything they had done was on the up and up. Everything they had done was completely legal, but we have some folks who are very upset, very passionate about the provisions in this bill that were ending up as law, and they decided to take it to court.
But as you know, Governor,
that we'll prevail.
I'm sorry, ma'am, but as you know, great pieces of legislation, even borderline laws, outright laws, have been stopped by less, circuitous means. So I guess what I'm asking is whether you're concerned the momentum is slowed, while the momentum on the part of all of these public union groups that are trying to recall senators who voted for this has actually gained, that their write-in effort here to get these guys recalled is actually picking up steam.
Well, in fact, there are recall campaigns on both sides that we should be aware of. We know that there are recall campaigns against some Republican senators, but there are plenty of recall campaigns going on against the Senate Democrats who actually absconded with their constituents' ideas, values, and went to Illinois. So their constituents were not represented for a full 3 weeks. And it was during that 3 weeks that our Senate Majority Leader had to call a conference committee, because at that point, we needed to get the bill done, because at that point, we were hearing more from the minority than from the silent majority, the voters in the state of Wisconsin that elected Governor Walker on November 2nd, asking him to balance the budget without raising taxes.
Okay, so worst case scenario, worst case, this would be a do-over? You'd have to do the whole thing over?
Well, we are fully confident that once this sees the light of day, we're going to prevail in this, because once again, there's no issue with the legality of the law. The only issue was how a meeting was called. We see absolutely no reason to rush back into the legislative chambers on this.
All right. Well, you might be right. Maybe it never comes to that. But, Governor, thank you very, very much. Good having you.
Thank you for having me.
March 29th, then, is the new D-Day in Wisconsin. That is when the judge holds a full hearing on the law. Litigation attorney Kelly Saindon says that the governor's case is still looking good, as the lieutenant governor pointed out. So, Kelly, your point is that the lieutenant governor's point is sound, and that the judge ultimately, in this sort of holding pattern here, can't hold it indefinitely.
Agreed. I think that I respectfully disagree with the Lieutenant Governor that it's not quite as simple as, they probably didn't do anything wrong, they know the law. We know how heated tension was. We know about all of the protests. We know about the fact that the Democrats left and they weren't able to get a majority. So what happened is that we're missing the step. The Republicans called this meeting, and there's 2 open meeting statutes, and I'm sorry for rambling, but it's either 24 hours in normal circumstances or 2 hours in an emergency. There's a question of whether or not that happened, and then they did a quick change law to say that the majority wasn't necessary to push this. So I think that if they do it the right way, I don't necessarily agree this was the right way, but it precipitated a change because now they have to either get the Democrats back to let them vote, and they're going to lose, or they have to go through, give the appropriate notice, change the law appropriately, then pass the second law regarding the collective bargaining. So I think it's much ado about nothing. But respectfully to the Lieutenant Governor, I believe our laws should be upheld, and I don't think they were in this case.
By the way, Kelly, when you talk about rambling, your most rambling moments make more sense than my most cerebral, so we'll leave it at that. But I am curious, Kelly, in all seriousness, whether this could get to be the kind of thing that whatever the decision is, it's appealed, that appealed again, it appealed again, it makes Florida and Arizona look like a joke by comparison.
You know, it certainly could, but the difference is here. She does have a great point, the Lieutenant Governor, that the law regarding collective bargaining has not been determined to be unconstitutional, so they could try to hold it up, but it's likely that's going to be passed. The issue is, did they sort of jam it down everyone's throat, or did they use surreptitious means to make it passed? But absolutely, you know how our country is. This could be tied up for a long time, but if the governor has his way, if Walker gets his way, it's going to be put into effect, and hopefully then there'll be some give and take on both sides while it is in the process.
I don't know, we were showing earlier, Kelly, but I remember it was a mob scene outside that Madison Capitol, and I know we still have images of it, but I mean, it would be very hard for members to get through there, even if they publicized the heck out of what they were doing, right? So
well,
how much of a factor is that? Something like that, that we publicized it. It was well known, but then those crowds out there were well known.
Well, you know, they could call a SWAT team in, they could call in the police, they could do a lot of things to allow them to get in, but you're right. I mean, some Fox reporters were punched. There were other ones who were getting shouted over, specifically on Fox, about some people's views on Fox News. It was very difficult to hear what's going on. A lot of people say it was scary there. So that's something that would be considered. But on the books, the bottom line is, did they have to give the notice? It's not whether people showed up. Did they give the appropriate notice? That's the question right now.
All right, good stuff, Kelly Saindon. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Neil.
All right, here's something to think.